On to the next page. I'm going to try to speed this up because there's just a lot of notes and it's kind of honestly putting me behind for the other notes. So let's see how we can do with this. There's a lot of examples. So I'm going to put dots right here with how many transformations there are, at least for these first two. Okay, so step number 1, like we talked about, we want to find the vertex, or the axis of symmetry. And then step number 2, we want to find the vertex. And we want to figure out if it's up or down. Okay, so this is addition, which is the same thing as subtracting a -1. So that means the axis of symmetry is x equals -1. So there's a -1 right here. And then the -6 is going to be part of the vertex. So we have -1, -6. So we're over 1 and then down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And because it's a positive, it's opening up. So that means these values are going to increase as we go through. So I'm just going to do -1 and -2 and 0 and plug it into this little table I'm going to make up. Okay. And then we're going to talk about the transformations. So if we plug in 0, because it's going to be easier, into this equation, you get 0 plus 1, which we know is just 1. So we get 1 squared minus 6, which is 1 minus 6, which is -5. And although it's a negative, it is actually increasing because it's less than -6. So we have this and we have this. So I'm only plotting 3 points just because this is a lot. If you notice, this goes up 1 over 1, this goes up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. It's kind of like slope when you do the first point to the left and right. Okay, so we have to figure out the transformations, and there's only 2. And those 2 transformations are actually stemming from the vertex. So we have this transformation and this transformation. And my cat is trying to get in on this video. Okay, and literally is attacking the pen as I'm trying to write. Okay, Remy, no. Okay, so the -1, okay, it usually starts at 0, 0. Well, it moved over 1. So it shifted left 1 unit. And then it went down 6 units. And that's it. That's the transformation. Right? Just to prove it to you, I'm going to go over to our Desmos screen, and it's not there. Hold on. Okay. And right here's the graph. This is the original, and this is what we have. It still has the same shape as this, but it shifted over 1, and it's down 6. Okay, so that's our first graph. All right, now let's move to the next one. The next one has 3 transformations. Okay, so we're going to go through these steps right here. And I'm not going to write them out. I'm just going to have them right here, and just keep those in mind when we do it. So step 1, what is the axis of symmetry? So the axis of symmetry is this value right here. Since this is negative, we always do the opposite. So it's actually x equals 4. And then we take the value that's added or subtracted at the end, which is 1. And then we're going to pick a point less than 4 and more than 4. So I'm going to write this down. Oh, live blog, cardiologist. I need to turn off my notifications, but still haven't. The question is it opening it up or down? Well, because of this negative right here, it means it's going to open down. So as you go through these values, it's going to decrease. Okay, so just to prove that, I'm going to make my little table. I'm only going to do one value because it should be symmetrical. So let's plug in 3. Why not? Oops, didn't mean to write that there. Oops. The equation is negative x minus 4 squared plus 1. And we're plugging in 3. The negative sits there. We do 3 minus 4 squared plus 1, which is -1 squared plus 1. Remember, we do this first, so negative times a negative is a positive. The negative in front drops, so we have -1 squared. Oops, back up. -1 squared is 1, so -1 plus 1, which equals 0. Okay. So we have the coordinate point of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I didn't mean to make a point there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then it opens down So the value should go down, and it looks something like this. Okay, so there are 3 transformations that happened. Okay, so let's go through this. Does it move left or right? So the first question asking you, does it move left or right? Well, it moves to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it went right 4 units. I'm going to put a U. And it shifted from here. It went up 1. So it shifted up 1. It went to the right 4. So our other one is up 1 unit. And that is because this is 4 right here, and that's 1. So the vertex tells you how you're moving left or right. So up or down. And then my third question would always be, is it reflected? Well, it is, because it's now opening down. So the other one's reflected. And the last question I would ask, and it's not on here, is it stretched or shrunk? Okay. So those are our 3 transformations, and I'm just going to prove it to you here. This is our graph. It moved over 4, it went up 1, and it reflected. Okay? And each point goes off the same way. There's no number in front of here, so that means it's not stretched or shrunk. Okay. Next graph. Okay, and this is important that I kind of want to talk about, and I'm going to erase this because it's in my way. Okay. So, actually, we're going to use this. Move this down here. Okay. So, if there's nothing in parentheses, so if there's no parentheses, that means no parent, that's not what I meant to write. I'm trying to shorthand it. No parentheses squared. That means the x value is 0, and that's because this is equivalent to x minus 0 squared minus 7. So that means in the first step, when you find the x-is symmetry, x is going to equal 0. In the second step, you're going to find the vertex. So you're asking, is it added or subtracted at the end? Well, it's subtracted, so the y value is -7. So the vertex is 0, -7. And then the third question I ask you, is it opening up or is it opening down? And that all depends if there's a negative sitting out in front, and there is right here. So that means it's opening down. And if it's opening down, then that means these values should be decreasing. Okay, since it's 0, I'm just going to use 1 and -1. I'm just going to plug in 1 because the -1 will have the same answer. So we have -3x squared plus, -7. Okay, so you have -3 times 1 minus 7, which gives you -3 minus 7, which is -10. So the values did decrease, okay? Now, let's do a comparison right here. If you notice with these values, they only changed by 1, but you notice by these values, it changed by 3. What I'm saying is from here to here, it went up by 3, decreased by 3, and it decreased by 3. Okay, and that's because of this. I'm going to re-highlight that -3 sitting out in front. If you look up here, technically there's a -1. Isn't it cool how it changes colors? There's a -1 sitting out in front of here, and that is why it changes by 1. And then if we go back up here, although there's nothing technically sitting in front of there, there is always a 1. And if you notice, these values only change by 1. So the values from the vertex change by more than 1. That means it's going to have a vertical stretch or shrink. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's figure out our transformations. And I'm going to tell you there's 2 transformations. All right, so we have 0 and then -7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's opening down, and 10 would be somewhere in here, but it's off the graph. Okay, so first transformation. The x value did not change, but the -7 is supposed to be at 0, 0, but it actually went down, The vertex of the parent function is at 0, 0, but now it's at 0, -7, which means this graph only shifted down, and it shifted down 7 units, okay? And then, and I lied, there's 3 transformations. Then if you notice that this is opening up, and now this is opening down, so because of that, it's reflected. And the last thing is if I told you that there's a number, I think on the last page, let's go back to it. I put it right here. If a is greater than 1, a is the number in front of x squared, it's vertically stretched. If it's less than 1, it's vertically shrunk. So because this is a 3 in front of here, it's vertically stretched by 3 because it's bigger than 1. Okay. On to the next one. I want you to try to see if you can figure out the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and if it opens up or down on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and figure that out. So pause the video now. Okay, now that you restarted the video, sorry, I was getting a text from my soon-to-be sister-in-law about my potential wedding. Who knows, it could be canceled. We're going to figure out the axis of symmetry. Well, the axis of symmetry is the opposite value in the parentheses. Remember, if there's no parentheses, it's x equals 0. So that will give you the axis of symmetry. This will help give you the vertex, and then there's something else going on here with these two. Okay, so axis of symmetry is x equals 3, and the vertex is 3, and whatever is at the end of this, and since it's positive 2, it's positive 2. So we have 3, 2. So right there, I want to go over what the 3 and 2 mean. Since it starts at 0, 0, and now it's at 1, 2, 3, up 2. What are those transformations? What are those 2 transformations? Okay, well, it's to the right 3 units, and it's up 2 units. Okay, and then we have to figure out some other things. Well, because of this negative, it's opening down, and because it's opening down, that means it's going to be reflected. Okay, and then the question is, what does this 1/2 do? So I'll show it to you, but then we'll talk about it because we're starting to get that point where I don't want to show it to you. I want you to see it from the equation, okay? So there's going to be some math going on here, some fractions, which we absolutely love, I know. Okay, so x value, the equation is negative 1/2. We're going to do 4, because this is going to be 2 and that'll be 4. So let's do 4 minus 3 squared plus 2. Okay, so we're plugging in 4, which gives us negative 1/2, and I put a 4 right there. Whoops-a-daisy. Getting ahead of myself. X. We're going to put a 4 right there, because that's the x value, minus 3 squared plus 2. Well, 4 minus 3 is 1, so we have negative 1/2, 1 squared plus 2. And 1 squared is 1, so we have negative 1/2 plus 2. And for the first time ever, I'm going to let you write this as a mixed number, okay? Just because it makes it easier. Do you notice how this decreases, as it should, because it's opening down, but it decreases by 1/2? The question is, why is it 1/2? Well, it's 1/2 because of this 1/2 right here. So there's that connection. It's 1/2, okay? So there's one more transformation happening, and that is making it vertically, since it's 1/2, it's less than 1, shrink by 1/2. And that's your 4 transformations, okay? We're actually going to go ahead and move on to the next page just to kind of finish this up because I feel like this kind of goes into the next part. Okay, so the next part is actually just going to give you all the information to put it together. So I've been writing this all on your notes, but here it kind of sums it up, and then we're going to actually write our own equations to finish it. So H is the horizontal shift. Now, if it's negative, or positive, sorry, if it's positive, it's actually moving left, and if it's negative, it's actually moving right. So it's the opposite. This is always the opposite of what you think. And I'm going to highlight that because I really want to make sure you're careful with that. Okay. And then K, which is always added or subtracted at the end, is the vertical shift, and that's normal. So if it's positive, it's up, and if it's negative, it's down. Okay. And if the value in front of here is negative, that helps us determine if it's opening up or down. I'm going to put open here. Open up or down. So if it's negative, it's reflected because it's going to make it open down, and it's across the y-axis, which we didn't really talk about, but that's a little bit more in depth of what it is, but I just want you to notice that it's reflected. Okay, and we said if it's, and don't worry about the absolute value, okay, that's just saying that the negative right here doesn't affect this, okay, so the negative doesn't affect. Okay, and you really just need to focus on this saying less than 0. The correct rule has that, or less than 1, okay, and greater than 1, like I wrote in that other page. Okay, so don't worry about this. Don't let it freak you out. So vertical stretch, and I use the word vertical shrink, which is bad English. Other people say compression. So keep that in mind. Compression is also another one. All right, so let's write some equations. Okay, so our parent function is either y equals x squared or f of x equals x squared. This is y equals x squared. Let's use f of x just because we can. So f of x equals x squared is our starting amount. And we want to write an equation where these are occurring. So I'm going to set it up like this. Okay? I'm going to set both of these up like this, just right now. Thinking this is the setup. Okay, so if it's translated 2 units to the right, that means that the h equals, up here, if it's moving to the right, that means that h is going to be -2, okay? And that's weird, but it's the opposite. So you really have minus -2, which is x plus 2 squared. So just to prove that, so if it's moving, oh, sorry, I said that to the left. Oh, back up, I confused you. That means the h is 2, okay? So it's -2. Negative shifts to the right, okay? I'm sorry, I did not mean to do that. Confuse myself. Okay, if it's shifting up, that means there's nothing going on the inside because it's not moving left or right. But it's shifting up, it's going to be added 5 to the end. So the equation I'm actually looking for is x squared plus 5. I just did this to set you up for how this works, okay? So 13. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to see if you can kind of do some of this on your own. Okay, so go ahead and try this on your own. Pause the video if you get stuck or you get done with it. All right, pause it now. All right, now that we restarted this video, we're moving to the left. And if we're moving to the left, it means you're adding, because remember, we do the opposite. So plus 3, and we're moving, oh, it says to the right. So let's make this up. And if we're going 4 units up, we just add 4. That's normal. X's are opposite. All right, 14. F of x equals, all right, it's reflected over the x-axis. So that means it's opening down. And if it's opening down, that means there's a negative sitting out in front of here. It didn't say anything about moving left or right, so I'm just going to put -0 for now. And then it's saying 3 units down, and that means we're going to subtract 3 at the end. You can check it up here, okay, but shift down, shift down. The way I really want to see this written is -x squared minus 3, okay? And last but not least, I want you to be able to figure out this right here by yourself. So I want you to try to do that by yourself. If you, that I think is possible, then try this, try the blue. But if you get stuck, just restart the video. If you get done, then obviously restart the video. So go ahead and pause the video now. All right, now that you restarted it up, let's talk about this 8. It's moving 8 units to the 8, so we add 8 here, but it's not moving left or right, so we really have -0, which, if you remember, that becomes x squared plus 8. That's really what I want to see. But the vertically compressed by a factor of 1/3, that is what affects in front of here. So if it's compressing, it tells you the factor, which makes life easy, and all you have to do is put it in front of the parentheses, or x squared in this case, okay? So that's it. That's the last video. I know there's a lot going on. Sorry it's so extensive. If you have any questions, just get a hold of me. Thanks, bye.